Well, it's January here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and you know what that means. It's the start of our General Assembly legislative session. Today we have with us NSU alum and chair of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, Delegate Lamont Bagby, to tell us what's ahead in this year's agenda, fighting for the people and representing your interests. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. We'll be right back with the overview of this legislative session. Welcome back. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. Again, we want to welcome you to this brand new year of 2023. Listen, I'm all about saying Happy New Year until the month of January is over, so you're going to hear that every single Sunday show here because, hey, it's great to be alive. It's great to be in great health. Health is wealth, and it's great to be here at the Norfolk State University, home of the Spartan Nation, the largest HBCU in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the best as well. As we broadcast live, as we always do, from WNSB, the Solar VA Hot 91. With us every Sunday, we always have our good friend, my good friend, and DJ extraordinaire, Marvin Folks, also known as DJ Scandalous, which you can hear on the air every day, Monday through Friday from 2 to 6 p.m., also on Saturday, and guess what? Hardest working man in radio. He's here in studio live with me every single Sunday. You know, I get asked that question, Marvin, all the time. You know, are you guys live on air? We come in the studio every Sunday, and we do live shows every single Sunday of the year. You know, and it's great to do it because we're able to give you up-to-date live, timely information of what's going on now. What's going on now in your community, what's going on now in your world, what's going on now and what's happening. So, you know, what we like to do, we like to talk about, you know, as this show is to bring movers and shakers, policymakers to you to discuss issues important to the community. And we like to bring the representatives that are representing you to talk about what's happening in your world, in society, what they're doing for you in your community. And listen, I'm so glad to have with us one of my good friends and one of the hardest working legislators in the Commonwealth of Virginia. That is NSU alum, chair of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, Delegate Lamont Bagby. Delegate Bagby, how you feel this morning?
Feeling great. Feeling great. Behold the green and gold. Good morning.
Behold the green and gold. Listen, if there's anybody, well, it may be one other, but, you know, if it's anybody that represents Norfolk State University, their alma mater on Capitol Hill in Richmond, nobody does it better than you.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you know, this is our annual, look at the agenda, General Legislative Assembly, as we take a look at what's happening on Capitol Hill. You know, as being, and a delegate, as being an alum of this institution, representing people in the greater Richmond area, you understand, you know, what's at stake. You understand the importance of making sure that the legislators and the General Assembly know what's happening in our communities and what's going on. Tell us a little bit about, you know, this particular session. What do you see? What's important to the people?
Yeah, Eric, before I forget, I want to make sure all the listeners know that they can look at the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus legislative agenda at theVLBC.com, theVLBC.com. You'll be able to see the legislation agenda that we have for this 2023 session. And it's a lot. It's a lot of not only new legislation focused on voting rights and health care and more money for education, not only just K-12, but also our higher ed, particularly our HBCUs. But it's a lot of defending the work that we've done in the last couple of years. And that includes what we've done to make voting easier and more accessible in the Commonwealth.
Absolutely.
What we've done to make sure that individuals have access to health care. Those are all things that we have on our agenda.
Absolutely. And that's very important because, this show goes out and is advertised over our social media. Also, we have a listener base of over 50,000 people in this area, but we have alums that are locked into that can listen online, and we have over 40,000 alums that we just on one social media platform, but really over 100,000 people that are locked into our social media. So I'm gonna give that information again. It's VLBC.com. That's VLBC, Virginia Legislative Black Caucus.com. You can go there. That's over 150,000 people across the country that now the information, the website. You can go and see what's going on in this legislative agenda for the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus. But I want to tell people a little bit about the caucus. The Virginia Legislative Black Caucus is made up of 21 members in the Virginia General Assembly. This caucus is committed to improving the economic, educational, political, and social conditions of African Americans and underrepresented groups in America. Now, I want to make the distinction that this group is all elected, right?
Yes, all elected.
And there are other groups out there that are made up of African Americans and other individuals who are not elected, but this particular group is all elected.
Usually I don't say stuff like this, Eric, but there's fakers and there's lawmakers.
Say that again.
There's fakers and there's lawmakers. There's some groups, particularly in Hampton Roads, that give folks the false impression that they are us. And I really wish that they would come up with a better name to describe themselves.
Absolutely. Well, that's why it's important to be in the know exactly what's going on, and to listen because, like you said, you can really, just on the word of one person, you can be fooled in thinking that one group represents one idea and they actually do not. I want to delve into, you talked about voting and access to the ballot box. And I've done a show during the Northern administration, how that particular General Assembly, which you're a part of, basically opened up and really was a model for the entire country in providing access to the ballot box. And we saw one of our neighbors in the South, the state of Georgia, decrease access to the ballot box. And the difference that we saw is that now communities are able to elect individuals of their choice more often and by wider margins. We see that now in special election that just concluded here in Virginia Beach. Former Republican Jen Kiggins now being represented by Democrat Aaron Rouse. Tell us how important it is to continue that fight, to keep an eye up on the legislation that you guys have already created to make sure it's not overturned.
Yeah, as we approach Dr. King Day, that was the main thing of the Civil Rights Movement. Everything flows from voting. That's how we're able to make the change in education, healthcare, the environment, justice. Everything flows from that opportunity and that access to the ballot box. And as you all know, and if you read up on our agenda, you'll know that we moved from 49th in the country to 11th when Ralph Northam was in office and we had the majority. And that's things like early voting. Early voting has shortened the lines. It has made it so individuals don't have an excuse for not voting. We have mail-in ballots. We have same-day registration. There are so many things that we've done to make voting easier, more accessible, and safer. And Eric, there are bills in the legislature right now from Republicans and the Yunford administration to turn that back, and we won't let that happen.
Absolutely. And I talked about, remember I mentioned, I said, why is it important to keep an eye on it? And you just nailed it. because there's always a bill that's legislation that's introduced to sometimes it's sneaking in to say, hey, we're going to turn this back or turn that back, but not just voting. And you mentioned MLK Day. Of course, we know Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, the holiday in which we recognize, which is on tomorrow. And that's turned into a day of service. We have a lot of commemorations that take place across the country and also across the world. What he did was very, very powerful in not just love, but fighting for equity and equality for all people. But that doesn't mean the legislature stops. So you guys are back at work on tomorrow, right?
Yeah, we don't take any days off or any holidays in the General Assembly. But Eric, as you know, over the years, the individuals that take the greatest advantage of being off on that Monday and being able to come to the General Assembly is the gun lobby.
That's right.
The gun lobby is coming strong this year. They've come strong in previous years, but they're really coming strong this year. They are wanting to block everything that we have related to public safety. And what we've been witnessing with firearms across the Commonwealth, in our cities and counties, and quite frankly, across the country, we have to do something about it. And we can't just blame it on behavioral health and mental health. We're going to address behavioral health and mental health, but we also have to take some of these guns off the street and hold people accountable.
Absolutely. For those of you who have been to the General Assembly during MLK Day, as Delegate Bagby mentioned, that's the day that the gun lobby actually has chosen to come to the Capitol. So that's the day that individuals actually can come inside of the General Assembly building with their firearms. I've always had reservations about that myself, just putting it out there. But again, we know that the fight doesn't stop. That's not going to intimidate anyone. When we talk about, public safety and criminal justice reform, you talked about gun laws and really gun safety. Unfortunately, here in the city of Chesapeake, here in Hampton Roads, we've had a terrible shooting here in our Walmart. Of course, we know about the 6-year-old child that brought a gun to school and shot his teacher, and then all the other shootings that are taking place across, like you said, across the country. What are some of the common sense things that you think that the caucus is focused on in ensuring that guns don't get in the hands of people that should not have them?
Well, there's some laws that we have put in place, and there's some laws that I think will help. Even going way back to the Wilder administration, we had he put in one handgun a month. Why does someone need to buy more than one handgun a month? These assault rifles that are used in the battlefields of war, we don't need those on our streets. And so those are a couple of things. And then as we look at some of these gun show loopholes, it's some things that we can do to address it that we can do almost immediately. I think that individuals should have their guns registered, just as we have our cars registered. We need to know who has guns. They need to report them when they're stolen. Republicans have even fought us on that. Report the gun when it's stolen so that we can know what guns are out there. There are a number of opportunities for us to address public safety and combat guns in a common sense fashion.
Absolutely. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. You're listening to our annual 2023 Virginia Legislative Black Caucus General Assembly agenda and overview with our NSU alum, good friend of the station, good friend of mine, and chair of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, Delegate Lamont Bagby, representing District 74. Delegate Bagby, when we talk about, I kind of want to switch to the governor. The governor opened up the session, which is what the governor usually does, in giving his agenda and talking about, day one, day two, and what they're looking to do. And then, of course, the rebuttal was given by the opposing party. This year, it was given by Don Scott, who is a representative here in the Hampton Roads area, and also the leader of the Democratic caucus, and then also Senator Mamie Locke. Senator Locke, whom I also used to work for, who's a longtime senator also in the Hampton Roads area. You know, Delegate Bagby, when the governor talked about day one wanting to have $1 billion in tax cuts, but then spend $2.6 billion, you know, does that make fiscal sense? Is that possible?
Well, I tell you what, the governor and I disagree. And I guess there's a number of places, but the governor is very focused on making sure that we send money back to large corporations and the richest among us. We were really fiscally responsible when Ralph Northam was the governor and Democrats had both houses, House and Senate. Mm-hmm. And so we have a significant amount of surplus because of the work that we did. And Youngkin wants to send that money and give that money to large corporations and individuals that make the most. We want to make sure that we're putting them and reinvesting that money not only in public education, but in public safety and mental health and behavioral health. But also, we want to make sure that we're giving some of that money back to the hardworking, middle-class families of the Commonwealth. We want them to get their fair share back. The bulk of the money in his plan goes to large corporations and those that make the most. And so we want to reinvest in the Commonwealth and reinvest in the Commonwealth people.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, Delegate Don Scott, in his response to the partisan noise, to the governor's speech, talking about the partisan noise and MAGA culture wars, he dubbed the Democrats' vision for Virginia as 4 goals: to create an economy for hardworking Virginians, protect our freedoms from Republican extremism, deliver a world-class education, and keep Virginia communities safe and healthy. I want to talk about this extremism because I was listening to a dialogue and also reading the UN Secretary report, and where they stated that, you know, the biggest threat to democracy in the West is not, you know, the violence that we see or things of that nature, things that we would think would, you know, destroy our country, but rather extremism, domestic extremism. When we take a look at none other than what took place in January 6th on our Capitol, you know, that's something that when I saw it happen live, I just scratched my head. I couldn't believe that was our country. When you look at these bills, you and I, we've looked at the bills that have come across. You know, how do you now keep the Commonwealth of Virginia and the people in your district safe from these extremism laws and bills? I would say bills and these culture wars, these MAGA culture wars, from really taking hold in our Commonwealth.
Well, I would like to say that the House is able to do a great deal to combat that, but again, we don't have the numbers in the House. And so I'm so grateful for the folks out in Hampton Roads, particularly in Virginia Beach and Norfolk, that went to the polls and elected Aaron Rouse to help us put one more brick in the brick wall in the Senate, because that's where we're going to really fight back, push back, and stop this legislation that Republicans and Youngkin have in the General Assembly session. That is going to be our protection. And so it's going to be very important that folks come out this November and make sure that we hold the Senate and then flip the House back. It is very possible, but we just need folks to take advantage of all the work that we did to make voting more accessible and safer in the Commonwealth and get out there and vote.
Absolutely. You know, I wanted to address this, and I guess I'll do it now. You jumped ahead. This November, So let everybody know what's taking place this November in the entire Commonwealth.
So everything is up. All members of the House and all members of the Senate are up for election. And so it's going to be very important for us to make sure that we get the majority in both. And then we can really push back on Youngkin's agenda and be more aggressive in the budget, in our budget negotiations, and making sure that these harmful bills don't make it through the legislature, even including a woman's right to choose.
Everything is up. This November,
Everything.
Every single seat in the House of Delegates and also the Senate is up for election. Now, that's 100 seats in the House of Delegates and also 40 seats in the Senate. So we're going to elect or reelect 140 representatives to go back to the State House in Richmond in 2023 for the 2024 legislative session. And, you talked about pushing back on the governor's agenda, the Republican agenda, keeping the majority for the Democrats. That's because this 2024 is the first full budget that the governor has. So his priorities go forward in that particular 2024. What are some of the things that you would like to see put into that budget bill to help improve people in your district and also African Americans across the Commonwealth?
Well, I'm hearing from our sheriffs and Commonwealth attorneys and police department that the number one challenge that they're facing is behavior and mental health. And it is stretching their teams. And one thing that we can do is to make sure that we strengthen how we respond to individuals that are in crisis and not make the situation worse. And so there are funds that Democrats and Republicans are working alongside each other to make sure that we are addressing those challenges and building out our infrastructure. And that means building teams, particularly in rural areas, that will go to a rural home and provide support and services to a family that's in crisis. That also means that our hospitals and our clinics are outfit to provide those quality service. It also means that we'll give additional funding to our first responders, police officers, and others to make sure that when they show up, they're showing up in with the proper equipment and knowledge and training to provide quality service.
Absolutely.
Another thing is there's no reason why we should be sending money to corporations when we should be sending money to our school systems. And so that money that we're sending to these corporations and individuals that have the most money, we should be sending that money to our school systems for not only increased pay for teachers, more school counselors, wraparound services, and bricks and mortar.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All those are not just significant for the African American community, but they're significant for the entire Commonwealth. We talk about common sense legislation, and when I look back and take a look at what you guys did during the Northern administration and look at the agenda that is on the website, the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus agenda, it's all about common sense legislation, ensuring that the people have equity and equitable opportunity to achieve their greatest dreams and make their desires come true. One thing I really appreciate about the caucus and yourself is that you don't lose touch with the people. So many times legislators, people who are in communities feel like they can't talk to their legislators, but you guys don't lose touch. I mean, you're there. And one individual that I believe that never lost touch, even though he was in Congress, he started out in the legislature, was the late Congressman Don McKeechin. I know that he was a mentor of yours. He was a close friend. In our closing time, if you could, I want you to give some words about Congressman McKeechin.
That was my guy. He was the first one to endorse me. His lovely wife, Colette, offered me an opportunity to speak at his funeral. One of the toughest speeches I ever gave, because he gave his all to the Commonwealth. He gave what he could to individuals like me that came after him. A lot of folks used to always try to figure out why he was so into being a champion for environmental justice. And he quite eloquently explained how environmental justice bleeds into everything else, how that bleeds into water, food, economic justice. And so he was a big champion for a number of things, and he did it with passion, and he did it with people in mind. He didn't argue just for the sake of arguing. He debated for a reason, and not for a show. He was just an all-around good man, and we're all missing him, because, I think about General Assembly sessions where even when he was in Congress, he and I would call in text about what legislation we had going on here, and he would give me advice. And so I'm missing that advice right now, but I think he's sold enough into me now that we can move forward. But even when I see legislation now pop up, I think about the work that he did.
Absolutely. Truly, we lost a giant, but he also left a giant impression and legacy, and you're definitely part of that. My good friend, NSU alum and chair of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, Delegate Lamont Bagby. Listen, we appreciate you so much for always being a friend to the university, a friend to this show, and a friend of mine. And keep up the good work, fight the good fight, and I'll see you on Capitol Hill tomorrow myself.
And Eric, thank you for all the work that you've been doing here in the General Assembly, being a champion for not only Norfolk State and HBCUs, but the overall agenda. And we're grateful for you, and I'll see you around.
That'll work. Thank you, my friend.
All right, brother.
God bless. Well, once again, we bring movers, shakers, and policymakers to you to discuss issues important to the community. Join us every Sunday as we bring those individuals to talk about those important issues impacting your life. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. Be great, God bless, and we'll see you next week.